Hello everyone and welcome to my channel War Chronicle. And today we're going to talk about the most expensive aircraft that never fought. No, it's not the B-2 Spirit, which has a per unit cost of $2 billion and has never seen combat. It's something else entirely. Something with a per unit cost almost double that of the B-2. Now with that said, let's get back to the video. So no, 3 on our list is the Northrop Grumman B-21 Raider. Now some of you might be asking, wait, the B-21 has already been built. You said it's the most expensive aircraft ever built. So how can it be the most expensive aircraft that never fought? Well, this is a little bit of a technicality. The B-21 has indeed been built, but it's still undergoing flight testing. It hasn't been cleared for operational use yet. Also, only 2 B-21s have been built so far. The first B-21 to be built, which was originally designated YRB-21, took its first flight on December 2nd, 2022. The second B-21, or as Northrop calls it, the B-21 Prototype No. 2, or PB-21, rolled out of its manufacturing hangar on June 19, 2023. So yes, technically it hasn't seen combat because it hasn't even been cleared for operational use, let alone used in combat. Another reason why it's the third most expensive aircraft that never fought is because of how expensive it is. The B-21 was designed from the ground up to be the future backbone of America's bomber fleet. As such, it has been designed to be easily mass-producible and easy to maintain. According to Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall, the Air Force expects the eventual cost of the B-21 to come down to around $500 million per aircraft when it enters service. However, at the moment, since it's still in development, it's impossible to say exactly how much it will cost. The Air Force wants to buy a minimum of 100 B-21s, with many experts predicting the eventual purchase of up to 200 B-21s. When you multiply 500 million by 100, you get $50 billion. And when you multiply 500 million by 200, you get $100 billion. That's why many experts predict the B-21 will end up being the most expensive aircraft program ever undertaken, with a final cost somewhere between $50 and $100 billion. But for now, while it's still in development, it's only the third most expensive aircraft that never fought. No, 2 on this list is a true monster. If there's one thing the Japanese were good at during World War II, it was building massive aircraft carriers. After all, they invented the thing. They also built more than their fair share of escort carriers, which were smaller aircraft carriers meant to protect larger vessels from enemy aircraft. These ships were typically used in large groups to protect the main fleet, but were also sometimes used independently. Japan built 3 different classes of these ships: the Chiyo class, which consisted of 4 ships, the Kitos class, which consisted of 8 ships, and the Taiyo class, which consisted of 64 ships. These ships weren't particularly fast, clocking in at a maximum speed of only 19 knots. But they were cheap and easy to build, making them perfect for the Imperial Japanese Navy. What's more, the ships were surprisingly long-lived. Despite being built in the mid-1930s, many of these ships remained in service until the very end of the war, some seeing active duty as late as April 1945. And since these ships were built to be expendable, they usually lacked proper armor, meaning that they were extremely vulnerable to air attack. But they did have one major advantage: they had big wooden decks. Yeah, seriously, most escort carriers had wooden decks. This may sound strange in modern times where composite materials and steel are the norm. But during World War II, wood was actually a common material used for aircraft carrier flight decks. In fact, the USS Lexington and the USS Saratoga, 2 American aircraft carriers that fought at the Battle of Coral Sea, both had wooden flight decks. The reason for this is because wood was an excellent fire-resistant material. This was actually such a common practice that the Imperial Japanese Navy didn't even think twice about it. In fact, they were so confident in the fire resistance of their flight decks that they outfitted their ships with oilers, which would spray oil onto the deck to help put out fires. No, 1 on this list is of course the Horten Brothers America bomber, otherwise known as the Nazi Doombolt. The America bomber was the brainchild of the Nazi German engineer brothers Rimmar and Walter Horten brothers. The Horten brothers were some of the most prolific designers of aircraft in all of Germany during World War II. In fact, they designed more than 30 different aircraft during the war. with their designs being used in both military and civilian applications. One of their most famous designs was the Messerschmitt Me 262, the world's first operational jet fighter. But arguably, their greatest design was also their most ambitious, the America Bomber. The America Bomber was a heavy bomber designed specifically to deliver powerful payloads deep into enemy territory. At a time when conventional bombers were limited to payloads of only a few thousand pounds, the America Bomber was designed to carry payloads of up to 50,000 pounds. This would allow the Germans to bomb targets deep inside the Soviet Union, something they had been unable to do up until that point. The America Bomber was also designed to have a very long range, allowing it to strike targets as far away as New York City. In fact, the Americans became so concerned about this aircraft that they offered the Horton brothers a deal. If they would defect to the U.S. and turn over the plans for the America Bomber, the U.S. would pay them $1 million and grant them asylum. Of course, the Horton brothers refused. With that said, the aircraft was never finished. Despite being one of the most ambitious aircraft designs in history, only 2 of the America Bombers were ever built. The first one was destroyed during an Allied bombing raid, and the second one was captured by the Soviets, who then used it to develop their own bombers. Had the Nazi Germany won the war, this aircraft would have been a nightmare for the Allies. The America Bomber had a crew of 12, consisting of a pilot, co-pilot, navigator, radio operator, bombardier, flight engineer, and 5 gunners. The aircraft was armed with a total of 13 13mm or 50 caliber machine guns, which were mounted in a dorsal and ventral turret, as well as in the tail. The aircraft also had a payload capacity of up to 50,000 pounds, which could be carried internally or externally. This allowed the aircraft to carry a variety of bombs, including high explosive bombs, incendiary bombs, and even nuclear bombs. The America Bomber had a range of 2,500 miles, which allowed it to strike targets deep inside the Soviet Union and also reach New York City. The aircraft also had a top speed of 420 miles per hour, which made it very difficult to intercept. In fact, the only aircraft that could possibly intercept the America Bomber were the British Avro Tudor II, the de Havilland Hornet, and the American B-29 Superfortress. But none of these aircraft were deployed in large numbers until after the war had ended. So the only conclusion we can come to is that the America Bomber was indeed the most expensive aircraft that never fought. As always, I want to thank my supporters for their continued support. I could not have done this without you guys. Also, if you guys enjoyed this video, I'd greatly appreciate it if you could hit that thumbs up button and maybe subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you guys next time.